This video is brought to you by Delicious Gamer Supps, where right now they have their Gamer Supps sale running until the 28th at 8 PM CET and 2 PM EST. So if it's before that, you can still get 21% off everything on their site using my code Thorin, Thorin. Maybe try acai blueberry, it's a nice pleasant flavour. Or check out my Gamer Supps tier list on my main channel where I'll show you my favourite flavours of Gamer Supps. They've got everything as well as the caffeine-free one, the AFK blend, the Gamer Teas, the Waifu Cups, all that and more. 21% off site-wide using code Thorin, Thorin. Right, I wanted to do this little short video. I'm going to do some videos on both Kobe Bryant and Tom Brady in the future, like full in-depth ones, like the MMA one where I go super in-depth on their careers, what I think about all facets. But one thing I've taken from my work as an analyst and a content creator in esports is I've collected a series, like an optician, of lenses that I can apply to look at things from a different angle and a different perspective and contrast things differently and basically stack things up. So I hate single factor analysis. So the most boring thing for me about both the NBA and the NFL is if you ever see fan conversations or even talking heads on TV who are experts, sometimes coaches, sometimes even like star players themselves, they use single factor analysis like who has more rings, who was better in the finals. Like, by the way, the finals are treated like the only game that matters in people's careers. So all that matters in the NFL is how you played in the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter what you did in the regular season and the rest of the play. That's all that matters. In the NBA, doesn't matter how good you are in the rest of the playoffs. There's no Conn Smythe. It's about, did you get the finals MVP? If you got the finals MVP, you might be the best player in that playoff run. If you didn't, you weren't. Whoever owned in the finals, that was the best person. But there's a flaw in that thinking that I want to highlight here with the careers of Tom Brady of the New England Patriots and at the end of the box and Kobe Bryant of the LA Lakers. And it goes like this. That's actually not always the finals, the hardest game in the playoff run, because both these sports are divided into conferences. So if you get unlucky, I mean, I don't know why I'm saying unlucky, like there's so many teams in both conferences, the chances that the absolute best team in both conferences makes it to the finals of the NBA or NFL and then play each other there. And it's not that, you know, they both go deep, but then one gets upset in the conference final, get an underdogs there or vice versa. The chances that happens are very, very low. Like you very rarely even get like the two number one seeds from both conferences in those sports make it to the Super Bowl or the NBA finals. So as a result, I actually think one of the silliest things is to act like, because in theory, that's the most important game because it's the one that wins you the championship and people are using championships as a massive marker as to whether you're an all-time great player. I think there's a very loose correlation as to whether you're an all-time great player. Spoiler, in the NBA, no one ever says Bill Russell's the GOAT. In the NFL, you'll never hear a person say Terry Bradshaw could be the GOAT or is even a GOAT contender. Look up their ring count, look up their success in the playoffs. They are never allowed to be in there. By the way, I wouldn't put them in the GOAT conversation, but I'm not using rings and finals and Super Bowl MVPs and finals MVPs as my ranking factor, am I? So one of the problems I have is this. Everyone knows in Counter-Strike or other esports games, where you actually do an MVP for the whole playoffs, because it's the whole playoffs, you don't always do it for the finals. If you're Zero or Simple, first of all, you could play awesome in the finals and get the MVP. That almost is never allowed in the NBA and NFL, by the way. But more importantly, the question we usually ask in an MVP run in Counter-Strike is, which were the hardest and most important opponents in games, and how did you do in those matches? So, for example, one of the reasons why Nico of Falcons, who lost the PGL Cluj-Napoca final, gets to be the MVP is because when he was playing against people like FaZe and Eternal Fire, in theory the best teams in the tournament on paper, he was smurfing, he was wrecking them, and that's the reason Falcons were even in the final, to then lose to Mouse and allow the Mouse player to look like they're the best. Whereas you look at who Mouse played, it wasn't the same level of opposition. So similarly, I want to apply the same lens to the careers of Kobe Bryant and Tom Brady very briefly. And essentially it goes like this. It's beautiful because for both of them, look, forget when Brady played in the NFC. He played the majority of his career in his physical prime, and his prime in terms of like the Patriot squads, when he was in the AFC. And similarly, Kobe Bryant played his whole career in the Western Conference. Now, what's beautiful, if you know anything about the 2000s and 2010s, is those were the two best conferences, usually by quite a large margin. And whoever actually won that conference pretty much would win the NFL or the NBA. So if you think about it, in the AFC, you had Tom Brady's New England Patriots. You had the Steelers, people will forget of Big Ben. You had the Colts of Peyton Manning, which could have won a couple of rings. You had the Broncos of Peyton Manning, which could have won a couple of rings. These were the best squads. You had the Ravens, even in theory, at this point in time. You had a super stacked AFC. And similarly, in the NBA, in the Western Conference, the champions were the Lakers. You had the Spurs dynasty. These were the people who were going to win the championship if they got there. And as a result, you could even then go deeper with teams that were really dangerous within that conference. So when you had the Suns as well, the Mavs at one point in time. By the way, the Mavs probably should have won the 2006 ring. So when you go and look at these conferences, first of all, how you play it in your conference is actually probably more important because of the sample size than how you play it in the finals in terms of who was the best player that year and in that playoff run. But even more importantly, I'll just say it right now, for the majority of the years Tom Brady was in the AFC, the real championship game was the AFC Conference Championship. It was how he did against the Colts or against the Steelers or against the Ravens. If you were in the NBA, the Western Conference was super stacked. That used to have the 1,051 teams. Sometimes getting 50 wins might even get you into the playoffs in the West. That used to be the conference where you're going to have to go through the Lakers, the Spurs, the Suns, the Mavs. Even outside teams like the fucking Jazz could be legit at times. The Nuggets weren't bad in certain seasons. These were the ones where, like, if you don't know, one of the reasons why it's so underrated Carmelo doesn't have a ring is if they win, and that was a very winnable series against the Lakers with some really close decided games, some of them were just steals by Ariza, by the way, and Kobe closing out with free throws. If the Nuggets win that, I'm telling you, they beat the Magic and he just has a ring straight up and probably the Finals MVP. If you look in other years, it was between the Suns and the Lakers as to who won. Who was probably going to win the NBA that time round. They took rings from each other in that sense. Similarly, if you go back, there are a whole bunch of MVP seasons for Peyton Manning where his offense is firing out this world, and then Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense shut them down, and that's why the Patriots go on to win and the Colts don't, and it took them a lot longer to win. So there's so many times where the most important game or the hardest game and the hardest matchup was the AFC Championship or the Western Conference Championship. And what people might not know is Tom Brady has a phenomenal record in the Super Bowl, and then even in terms of touchdowns, interceptions, loads of things. He's had mega yardage games. He's got loads of Finals MVPs. Here's what picked Super Bowl MVPs. Meanwhile, Kobe Bryant, he actually usually wasn't as good in the finals early on in his career, although, by the way, in 2000 he was injured. In 2001, he just shot himself out the series and played a little bit poor. I think he had a bad back in one game, though. And then in 2002, he was actually excellent, but just Shaq absolutely monstered. And famously, because the other teams in the finals didn't have elite scoring centres, they typically just played the ball into Shaq and let him dominate. Now, what people don't know is Kobe Bryant was the better player in the Western Conference Finals pretty much the entire time Shaq and Kobe played together. And after that, he was amazing. If you had that award you have now, where you can get Western Conference Finals MVP, I actually think he would have won every single one. I think he would have won something like 7 Western Conference Finals MVPs. If you don't know, he was even the MVP, if you actually go and watch how they play, even in the first one against the Pacers. And he was smurfing against maybe Shaq would have won it for the Kings series, to be fair. But he certainly would have won for the one against the Spurs in 2001. Oh, he would have had a whole bunch. He definitely would have won against the Spurs in 2008. He would have had so many, it's ridiculous. But what people might not know is this. It's actually the other way around for Tom Brady. Do you know Tom Brady, the consistently worst playoff game in his career is the AFC Championship? Like, I'll tell you the numbers right now. In the AFC Championship, he had 21 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. Now, the reason why is obvious, right? He's playing against the Ravens, who were an elite defense, amazing defense. The Steelers had some all-time defenses, Polamalu, etc. And Ravens obviously had Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, etc., and the Suggs, etc. You had the fucking Jets even. They were pretty legit at one point in time. They had Darrelle Revis, etc. He's playing against them, and even when he's playing against offense, he's playing against the Colts. These are the best teams in the NFL. These are the other teams that are dangerous, that are winning them double-digit games. And if they beat you, they're going to win the championship, as happened in many of these occasions. But as I said, Kobe was probably, I think, one of the best players ever in conference finals. Like I said, he was probably the best in all, but maybe 2. And he would have won something like, I think off my top of my head, he would have won something. All right, I guess he made more, so. He also did lose in the Western Conference Finals, so. No, I think he would have won like 6 or something. I think he would have won like 2001, 2002, 2004. Because remember, they didn't win that ring. 2008, he would have won. 2009, 2010 was the one against the Suns. He would have won 6 or something. So they actually have reversed careers. Kobe wasn't quite as good in the finals overall. Tom Brady was superlative in the finals. Tom Brady wasn't particularly good in the conference finals. Kobe was a killer in the conference finals. He was absolute money. So it's just a different lens to apply when you're considering who is the best. And obviously we count more than just the finals game, don't we? Without the noble families of the Italian city-states, you may never have heard of or been able to appreciate the art of some of the greatest Renaissance artists of all time. And similarly, my content on this channel, which I consider art, is kindly supported by Ibradiation and the rest of my Patreon supporters. Do you want to choose one of the topics that I might focus on next in a video? Maybe you want to ask me a question that I'll answer in a video AMA. Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are for Thor Inquiry. Maybe you want to take part in one of those private, never to be released, recorded for your benefit discussions with me one-on-one, where you can talk about almost any topic, assuming it's appropriate. Well, if any of those perks or others tickle your fancy, heed this call to action and join Thorin's side today at the Patreon link in the description box below.